Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner. If you're watching on the Washington Examiner website, thank you for joining us. If you're watching on any of other social media platforms, please like and subscribe. The buttons are on your screen. I'm joined today by Jim Antle, executive editor of the Washington Examiner magazine. And as usual on Political Perspectives, we're going to talk about some of the main stories that are making headlines. And the first one, Jim, that I wanted to talk to you about was the pardon of Hunter Biden. Let's just look for a moment at the number of times, occasions when the president and also the White House denied that there would ever be a pardon.
Will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes. I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Why doesn't President Biden just pardon him?
President, I've been very clear. The president's not going to pardon
And
his
one
son.
more.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
So there you have, both from the president and from the press secretary, repeated assertions and denials that Hunter Biden would be pardoned. Yet now that the election, that allowed the Democrats to run as the party that stood up for no one being above the law.
Right.
They were the party of propriety and constitutional order, as opposed to their opponent, who they constantly depicted as a convicted felon. Now that the election is over, and of course they lost, the pardon can go ahead. This was one of the most cynical moves that a lot of people in Washington have seen for a long time, and that's in Washington.
Absolutely, but there are a lot of people who are supportive of the president who at least pretend to be naive about this. There were a lot of claims that President Biden's reluctance to pardon his son was evidence of his propriety, his commitment to the rule of law. And what happened to Hunter Biden, his convictions, were sort of exhibit A in Democratic arguments against the idea that there was any lawfare against former and now future President Donald Trump, that this was simply a Republican or right-wing talking point. Mm-hmm. And I think the pardon completely demolishes all of that.
It completely demolishes it. And I think that one of the things that is perhaps most intriguing about this is that the pardon was of the convictions on a gun crime and on tax fraud. Mm-hmm. Now, these are not minor, perhaps, but they are nothing like as sort of worrying as the idea that the Biden family has collected millions of dollars, at least $10 million, and the numbers range up to, I believe, $20 million, peddling Joe Biden's name, peddling influence, and money coming in from the likes of China, from entities connected with the Chinese Communist Party, from Ukraine. And the pardon ensures that those will no longer be investigated. It starts to wipe the slate clean. There's talk about more pardons coming before Joe Biden leaves office, for example, of his brother James.
Right.
This is a huge cover-up to make sure no one looks into this any further. Isn't that right?
Right. I mean, even when you just look at the felonies for which Hunter Biden was convicted, the idea that the rich don't pay their fair share in taxes and that we need to have stronger background checks for guns, these are pretty central to the Democratic platform, certainly President Biden's political agenda. But by having the terms of the pardon cover basically everything from 2014 to the beginning, to basically the end of 2024, these are things in which the president himself is potentially implicated.
Right.
If not criminally, certainly he was a willing participant, as we've discovered, in his name being used to build Hunter Biden's rather questionable business practices. This wipes the slate clean on that. Doesn't obviate the ability of Congress to continue to call people to testify, and there may be some legal wrangling about that, but in terms of there being a meaningful criminal investigation of these things, Hunter Biden is now untouchable on these things.
Right. And it's interesting that the pardon may undermine Hunter Biden's ability to claim cite the Fifth Amendment to avoid testifying because he cannot any longer incriminate himself. So he could be subpoenaed to testify on Capitol Hill, and Congress, in doing its duty as the oversight of the executive, could choose to try and open this up. It's possible, although the wrangling will no doubt go on for a long time, that this might at least elicit more information. In some ways, it's knowing what actually happened that is more important than punishing Hunter Biden or members of the family.
I think that's right. And I think we've really wanted to get to the bottom of what the president's own role in this was. I think we have a pretty clear idea of what kind of guy Hunter Biden is, how he's made his money, all of the shady international connections that he's had. But to what degree was the president simply not doing enough to tell him to knock it off versus an active and willing participant? And I think we have, in some of the congressional investigations, learned that he was on phone calls, he had conversations with investors and business partners, he had some degree of knowledge that his name was being used, but to what degree, and to what degree did he perhaps benefit himself?
And of course, Hunter Biden's business partner, Bob Alinsky, said that Biden himself, the president, was referred to as the big guy and would be taking a cut from all this. So there's an extraordinary story of family corruption here, which I think that most people would want to come out, so at least they know what the 46th president of the United States has been involved in. Let's turn our attention to President Trump, or at least the transition to President Trump, and specifically the nominees that he has. I want to talk about two of them, Pete Hegseth, who has been nominated to run the Department of Defense, and Kash Patel to run the FBI. Pete Hegseth has been looking pretty shaky just recently. I want to have a look at a clip of his mother talking about him this morning. Let's have a look at this on Fox News.
We all believe in him. We really believe that he is not that man he was 7 years ago. I'm not that mother. And I hope people will hear that story today.
The man you wrote to in 2018, who you were really mad at.
As a mom.
He is different than that man.
Absolutely.
The reason that Hegseth's mother is now out there saying what a strong, good young man Hegseth is that she had been critical of him, and someone leaked that criticism to the New York Times. There was a substantial story about that. She's out there saying that she withdrew that or retracted it. How do you think the Pete Hegseth nomination is currently faring? I mean, can this charm offensive or repair that's being done now save it, or do you think that it's weakening?
There are some shades of John Tower here, the Texas senator who George H.W. Bush nominated to be Secretary of Defense in the late 80s, and he was ultimately disqualified by his fellow senators due to allegations of drinking and, to a lesser extent, womanizing. These are the kinds of allegations against Pete Hegseth right now. I think a big difference here, though, is Hegseth has not served in the Senate like Tower did, and Tower, very much like we've seen more recently with Matt Gaetz, whose nomination for Attorney General has already been withdrawn, was personally disliked by his colleagues.
Right.
I don't think that's a dynamic that exists here. I think the problem for Hegseth is that some of these personal allegations are being piled on top of questions people already had about whether he's really qualified to manage a bureaucracy as big as the Department of Defense.
Right. So, just in the last 24 hours or so, stories have emerged about the possibility that if Hegseth has to withdraw, his nomination is withdrawn, if he steps aside, that one of those people who are being considered to replace him is Ron DeSantis, currently the governor of Florida. Right. Now, it was being put about on social media that this was something that Senators Lindsey Graham and Joni Ernst wanted to do because they wanted nothing to do with Hegseth, and they were already starting to talk about the possible replacement. But also, some of the noise about Ron DeSantis has emerged from Mar-a-Lago. So that doesn't seem like something which would be, well, what do you make of it?
Well, obviously, Trump likes trial balloons, and he is going to sort of evaluate what the reaction to this is. I don't expect him to abandon Hegseth prematurely, but the fact that there is all of this speculation about a person who probably would be more popular with Senate Republicans than Pete Hegseth is, it doesn't necessarily bode well. It also looks like these are sort of officially sanctioned rumors that are sort of going around. Once you start to speculate about who the next person is, it's a lot easier for Republican senators to say that maybe they want to take a pass on Hegseth.
DeSantis was on TV just recently saying that the president deserved considerable degree of deference from the Senate in his nominations.
Right.
He was talking about Kash Patel there. So there's DeSantis backing the president, and I don't know whether that had anything to do with his possible move to the Department of Defense. But let's turn to Kash Patel. He has made some incendiary comments.
One thing we will do that they never will do is we will follow the facts and the law and go to courts of law and correct these justices and lawyers who have been prosecuting these cases based on politics and actually issuing them as lawfare. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you.
Those sorts of comments put a very considerable onus on the Senate to fulfill its oversight duty very thoroughly in the case of Kash Patel. But you haven't seen as strong a reaction against Patel amongst Republicans as you did, for example, against Gates, and nor indeed as strong a reaction as you get against, at the moment, there is against Hegseth. How do you rate the Patel nomination to run the FBI? I mean, is this going to succeed, do you think, or not?
Well, some of it is there's only so much political capital Republican senators are going to want to spend denying President Trump the nominees that he wants to have. So they're going to have to pick and choose some of the battles that they want to fight. And they still have Tulsi Gabbard ahead. They have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So some nominees, and I put Kash Patel potentially in this category, improve their chances based on what has already happened to Matt Gaetz and what appears to be about to happen to Pete Hegseth. So if Hegseth survives, then potentially you will see greater scrutiny, I think, of Kash Patel. Yeah. But there is going to be they're only, even though they have the numbers to do what they want to do, they are going to have to work with this new administration.
Right.
There's only so many hits they want this administration to take. So I think they can't really reject all of Trump's unconventional nominees.
And is there also, as it were, a sort of countervailing trend in that as soon as one nominee is ousted, Gates having been the first, attention immediately goes to the next, so that there's blood in the water. People want to go, so okay, let's see who else we can destroy. And will there be an effort to save Hegseth so that those who oppose the administration, of whom there are obviously legions, will not then turn their attention immediately to Patel or to Gabbard or to RFK? So is there a danger of sacrificing a nominee because that would encourage those who oppose the administration?
Particularly if they seem too, and by they I mean Mar-a-Lago and President-elect Trump, seem too eager to abandon troubled nominees. So they really didn't take the fight over Matt Gaetz very far. There are already the rumors of there being backup plans for Hegseth, as we've mentioned. If Trump starts to look like he doesn't want to use his leverage over the Republican-controlled Senate in a situation where very few of his nominees are going to get meaningful Democratic support, it does create the possibility that his opponents within his own party are going to feel that they've got a lot of wind at their backs.
Right, right. Well, Jim, we're still more than 6 weeks away from the inauguration.
Yes.
And then, only then will the nominations actually go up to the Senate, and only then will these things be, will they be brought up for confirmation hearings. The incoming Majority Leader, Senator John Thune, has put out his schedule, and it looks as though the Senate's going to be in on Fridays, at least some sessions on Fridays, in order to get the very considerable amount of work done that is required at the beginning of the administration, of a new administration. So we'll obviously be following that. There's going to be more to discuss every week. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us. And let me finish by repeating that push that like button, push that subscribe button. We're glad you want to be, as it were, partners and engaged with the Washington Examiner.